And we're live. Hello everyone, this is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, and welcome to the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues episode number, 75, with yours truly. It's Independence Day, Independence holiday weekend here in the US, so I didn't have a guest. Actually, I should tell you, I didn't have a guest for today's episode. But I should tell you this: I did get a question, an email asking how do I go about choosing my guest. I think it was the phrase that was used. I don't really choose. Sorry, I almost knocked the microphone over. I don't choose my guests as such. I've been around for a long time, so I know a lot of people, and fortunately, I'm friends with many of them, and fortunately, a lot of the guys that I'm friends with in the martial art world have a lot to say, or sometimes I can coax stuff out of them. So let me say hello to Scott Ferreira, Sifu Randy's here, Mark Stewart is here, Mark David Collins, Carla Arce from Coral Springs is here, Samir is here, Simon Alpin. All right, hello Simon. Yeah, so Simon's got it right, and as does Mark. Right, say where you're signing in from. Sifu Randy in Myrtle Beach. Okay, all right. So yeah, so I don't choose as such. I know a lot of people. I have a huge, always growing list of people that I would love to pick their brains on stuff, people that I would love to hear from, people that I would love to do what I can to get their thoughts on Jeet Kune Do out to a larger audience. And so that's what the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues is for. I can tell you that I am literally presently in contact with Sifu Paul Vunak's group to see when I can get him onto the show, right? So yeah, so as you guys are logging in, go ahead and say where you're logging in from. Hey, Nick Cavallino, who else is here? Luci Del Gaudio. All right, welcome. Milton Davis, Jacques Caravasilis. Wow, that's a heck of a name, Jack. I hope I didn't butcher that. All right. So yeah, I got that question about guests on the dialogues, and like I was saying, I will talk to anybody who's willing to talk to me. I'm known as an Inasano guy, right? So I guess some people would then label me as a Jeet Kune Do concepts guy or something. And in some circles, there's an automatic assumption, oh, well, if you're a concepts guy, then you don't have anything to do with people from this era or people from that other era, which is dead wrong. So I'll talk to anybody from any camp, as you've seen over the months that we've been doing this. People like, hang on one second. So I just messed myself up here. If you guys can hear it, I'm trying to take a look at the comments, and I pulled up the live video, so I'm talking to you and listening to myself in the headphones, so that won't work. So hang on one second here. I gotta fix this. All right, so just got to be sure that I can. All right, okay. So like I was saying, anybody who is willing to come on the program and talk with me, I'm willing to talk back to them. I don't care where it's from. If you watch the broadcast on Wednesday, we were talking a little bit about the Oakland group and what have you. Thus far, I've had one person from the Oakland group, Sifu Felix Macias, come on. There are other people that I've been talking to, and so on and so forth, right? Okay, so the other question that came in from my friend Terry Valor in England, and okay, all right, now I'm on the right page. Okay, so let me deal with this one, because I have the other one written down, Terry. So let me talk to Simon first. Yeah, of course, Cass. Okay, so here's the thing about Cass Magda, right? Cass trained for, if I have it correct, Cass trained for 5 years, 16 hours a day, as Dan Inosanto's assistant. So in '83, when I came on board, Cass was Sifu Inosanto's assistant. That's how I met him. So he and I have been friends for 36 years, and Cass has a lot to say, but most of what Cass says, he says in private to his group, in his class, and then he says it to me we talk on the phone at least once a month, right? And he's promised to come on to the show sometime in the year 2019. So I work on him all the time, right? Believe me. And Simon, and we'll see. But you're right. Yes, Cass trained with everybody, because he was one of the founding members, I guess we could say, of the Jeet Kune Do nucleus. But quite possibly even before that, he was already training with people like Ted Wong and Dan Lee and Bob Bremer and Tim Tackett and all those guys. All right. So okay. So Dale Barger wants to know, how did concepts of Jeet Kune Do come about? All right. So remember, Dale, that I'm not a spokesperson for Dan Inosanto. All right. So I'm going to tell you, as far to the best of my knowledge, Sifu Inosanto's naming of his thing as Jeet Kune Do concepts was an attempt to stay true to this promise to not commercialize Jeet Kune Do. One of the best places to read about that would be, if I had the book here, I'd be able to tell you the page, but it is in Sifu Inosanto's Jeet Kune Do, The Art and Philosophy of Bruce Lee, in that book. And he says that, actually it's a passage where Richard Bustillo talks about what the Filipino arts and Jeet Kune Do have in common. So one of the ideas is an emphasis on the lead hand, or on the lead weapon, right? Then there's the idea of check-in, as they call it in Filipino martial arts, which is very similar to trap-in from the Jun Fan or the Wing Chun or what have you, right? So Sifu Inosanto's idea in naming his thing Jeet Kune Do concepts was to illustrate how the concepts that are the underpinnings of Jeet Kune Do could be found in other martial art methods, or if they couldn't be found in martial art methods, they could be applied in other martial art methods. So his whole idea was, since I said to Bruce Lee that I wouldn't commercialize Jeet Kune Do, I won't teach Jeet Kune Do as passed on to me on seminar. I'll teach that only in private settings and what have you. But on seminar, what I'll do is use all these other martial art methods to show people how the underpinnings of Jeet Kune Do can be applied across the board. That's my take on it, Dale. I hope that's a good enough answer for you. Richard Burgess wants to know, I hear all these guys with the B and the G in their names. Is it Barger or Barger? Is it Burgess or Burgess? Right? I hate messing up people's names, right? Hello, Andrea. How you doing? All right. So what do I like most? Did you say most or best, Richard? Whatever. What do I like most about Filipino martial arts? The concept of universality of motion, which is a phrase that I coined. It's trademarked, so don't anybody try to use it. Universality of motion. The way that some motion. So I have a saying. This is another one of the things that I coined in order to pass on, to make it more understandable to my students. I say that in Kali, the stick is the training method for itself, because there is a thing called stick fighting. But so the stick is the training method for itself. For the blade, whether it's the long blade or the short blade, and also for some aspects of empty hands, right? Not everything that you do with the blade or with the stick is immediately another thing that we have here in Miami that I use to explain stuff to my students is we talk about translating the movement or the motion of the weapon into the empty hands. And there are things that are literal translations, but then there are a lot of things that are interpretations of the movement, right? So if on the broadcast I talked about this, so Mr. Burgess, if you have the time or the inclination, if you look at if you go on the YouTube and you look at the playlist for I think it was the Kali stuff was last month. I talk about it at length there, right? So then the other thing. So Terry Valor messaged me this, and again, somehow I guess maybe as an Inasano guy, people think, well, he's the guy to ask questions about the Filipino martial arts, right? So Terry says, I have a question. If understanding weapons for a Jeet Kune Do purpose, if you do double stick, do you need to do single stick? All right, so I'll tackle that part first, right? One of the benefits of doing double stick is that it brings up, not to the same level. So if I'm a natural right-hander, so there's no way in doing double stick that my left hand is going to become as educated as my right hand. It's not going to happen. But doing double stick, Terry, does definitely do a heck of a job for bringing up the level of coordination and speed and all that good stuff in your left hand. So that is a primary reason for training double stick. Another primary reason for training double stick is the speed that you could develop. And that is something that is definitely translatable into your empty hands punching, for example, right? So that's one reason for double stick. I have an unscientific theory that since what is it? The left hemisphere controls the right side and vice versa. So my unscientific, unfounded theory is that if I train double stick, it will help me to stave off mental disease and mental illness as I grow older. And also that double stick, because when you first try it, your left hand is so spastic, right? It makes you a more compassionate person, because then you have to develop patience with your own self, right? And you're like, man, if this is what I'm going through, imagine what other people out there go through in trying to learn something new. So it can make you a more compassionate human being, and it can make you a better instructor, right? So that's my thing on double stick. So do you need to do single stick if you do double stick? Yeah, because you still want to train your naturally stronger side, right? So you still want to develop single stick stuff. And then when it comes to the actual combat application, there's stuff that you do in double stick that you might not do in single stick. So for example, a conversation that Cass and I had a long time ago is, you'll see people out there with the double stick thing, and they'll be doing like a double stick disarm, right, of single stick. Yeah, that's translation of the motion, but that's kind of bogus in my opinion. The best thing about double stick is Cass calls it a quick blitz system, right? So maybe you defend and then you just rat-a-tat-tat on them, right? That's probably the best use of double stick. You don't have necessarily the same kind of quick blitz system with single stick. So there's a difference in the application, Terry, between double stick and single stick when it comes to combat. So yeah, you still definitely have to work on your single stick skill, right? And is stick and dagger an important part to understand? So I'll tell you, just like I told Mr. Burgess, right? Definitely check out the broadcast where I talked about, I think in the Kali segment, I did maybe 3 or 4 different issues of the broadcast talking about the Filipino weapons and the way that you could apply that to your JKD training. So definitely take a look at that. Yeah, Mr. Burgess. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Richard, are you aware that this is the kind of stuff that got me in trouble with some of my so-called senior students a long time ago, but I love to tell this story. The devil is in you, yeah, because the Latin word for left hand is the root word that gives us in English the word sinister, right? So dextra is the right hand, and sinistra is the left hand. Right, so, yeah, the devil was definitely in you. All right, so Terry asked if stick and dagger is important to understand. When I came on board, I talked about this in the broadcast also. Stick and dagger was referred to, I guess originally by Johnny Lacoste, as the backbone of Filipino Kali. So if something is the backbone, I think that's a way of saying that it's extremely important. So I was told that if you understand long and short in all of its manifestations, in all of its variations and what have you, then you will understand the art of Kali. So yes, to make a long answer short, stick and dagger is quite important. But again, don't get caught up in all of the fancy stuff that can kind of insinuate itself into the Filipino martial arts. One really what's the opposite of abstract? Concrete, right? One really concrete aspect of long and short is the idea of jab and cross. Burton Richardson put a clip up just a couple of weeks ago where it was, in essence, what they were doing is like probing and what have you with the stick and then rushing in with the dagger as kind of a reflex or timing training mechanism. So stuff like that, right? So think about it this way, Terry. If I do long and short, that's right hand and left hand. So that's related somewhat to double stick. If I'm doing long and short, I'm definitely doing single stick, and if I'm doing long and short, I'm definitely doing single dagger, albeit, dig this, single dagger in my left hand. So unlike Richard Burgess, who is a natural lefty, but now he's all screwed up because they forced him to learn to write with his right hand. Thank you, Mr. Burgess. I just remembered the thing for teaching the kids in my class the difference between left and right. Which one do you write with? That's your right hand. The one that's left is your left. Thank you. Now I can go back to class on Tuesday and deal with that. Okay, got to keep me under control with these tangents. As opposed to knife. So, is stick and dagger an important part as opposed to knife? Well, knife is extremely important in the Filipino Kali, but then it's another thing that you got to be careful with is in terms of liability and what have you. And again, I've seen a lot of very fancy stuff out there. I used to do a lot of the fancy stuff back in the day because, whatever you're shown, that's what you do. Whatever you create on your own, that's what you do until you come across, you have an experience that drives home the importance of practicality and functionality, and then that puts a different spin on everything. So dagger training is very, very important. You'll see a lot of people doing like the double dagger stuff. And a lot of the double dagger stuff can be very fancy. I think you got to be a little bit careful with that, right? But again, because it's both hands and both sides of the body, there's definitely some benefit to training that. Um, Terry also asked about guntings, right? So, for those who are not familiar, so gunting is a word that means scissors. It refers to the crossing motion, the Xing pattern, I guess you could call it, that you could work. And so, the gunting, as far as I understand, the gunting comes from the blade work. When applied empty hands, instead of having the dagger that you could like slice the bicep or what have you, what you do is you use the knuckles onto the, I forget the biological name for it, but it's to the nerve points in like the elbow joint or what have you. So are they as important in empty hands as if you have a blade? No, they're not as important. I mean, they're kind of, they might not be the easiest thing in the world to pull off. I'll tell you a story though. When you sent me this question, Terry, I remembered, I want to say that it was my Canadian colleague Nip Kabayama, but this was a long time ago, so I might have the story all messed up. But and I think it was at a seminar somewhere in Michigan, right? And Nip decided that he would see if this gun thing would really work, and so he had his brother punch at him, and he nailed it perfectly onto the joint with the knuckles or what have you, and his brother passed out. That's the story as I remember it. I wasn't there, so I can't say that that's exactly what happened. I might not even be reporting the story correctly, but that's a story I've heard about guntings. My personal experience, I have been able to hit people. Nobody passed out, but I've been able to hit people in the arm as they punch at me, because we have a thing where we do it at speed, right, where they're really trying to go for it, and you're really trying to but we don't hit but we open up the hand and slap the inner part of the arm, right? So even that works. When you slap somebody on the inside of the arm, that gets you a reaction that can buy you a little bit of time, right? Okay, so enough of that. I saw something come in from Simon. Does Inasano lineage work on the lead straight punch as you see in the other first generation students? I was thinking about this the other day, Simon. I am not sure how many people who see Dan Inasano on seminar, right, actually have an opportunity to see him teaching his Jun Fan class at his school, right? Now, in all honesty, I haven't been out to the Inasano Academy in a few years. I don't even remember when last time I was there, but I can tell you that in the old days there was a Jun Fan class, right? And you would see stuff being worked on. Now, I have a suspicion that you're asking, Simon, if the Inasano lineage people work on the lead straight punch as much as you see in the other first generation students. I can't answer that for you. I'll tell you one thing I noticed, because when I look at videos of people, like for example from who are with Ted Wong, like so my friend Jason Corral, Mike Gittleston, I've seen stuff from him. I mean, from Sifu Ted himself as well, right? Tim Tackett and the Wednesday Night Group. These guys put a heavy, did I say heavy? Heavy emphasis on the lead straight punch. Now, I don't know if Sifu Inasano works on it to that degree. Definitely not on seminar from what I've seen, because on seminar he's trying to cater to like 5 different levels of people. He's also trying to cater to a number of different interests or what have you. So he might not unless perhaps the seminar host asked him to stick to just one area of training, and then maybe he would focus on that. But yeah, the Inasano lineage people, of course we work on the lead straight punch. That's what we're supposed to do. If we're not doing that, then that's like a cornerstone of Jeet Kune Do that we're not really paying that much attention to, right? Okay, so let's see. Did anybody else send in anything? Yeah, you know that. Okay. Dale says that he understands from Ted Wong that Jeet Kune Do is mostly boxing and fencing, and that Sifu Dan stresses Wing Chun. So I'm not sure, Dale, if you're saying that Ted Wong is the one who said that Sifu Dan stresses Wing Chun, right? I'm not sure if that's what you mean, and. You know, this is kind of related to what we talked about on the broadcast on Wednesday, because I remember. Look, I'll put it to you this way. All right. Okay. All right. Thanks, Dale. So let me think of the best way to put this out. Right. So. Different people got different parts of Bruce Lee at different times, and so if you happen to be with Bruce Lee at the time that he was working on more boxing strategies, more fencing applications than when he was working on Wing Chun, then that's your experience of Bruce Lee. So somebody who experienced Bruce Lee in 1961 might have a completely different experience from somebody who experienced him in 1967. You see? So I know for a fact that Sifu Asano, because one of his ideas is you don't want to end up copying Bruce Lee. As much as possible, you could kind of go through the same steps or the same process that Bruce Lee went through. So if you have an opportunity to delve into Wing Chun, then go ahead by all means and delve into to Wing Chun. You know, so what I just said there about the time that you are with the time that a person may have spent with Bruce Lee, they would have seen a different side of Bruce Lee. You know, with Inasano, it's something similar, right? It's not the same thing. It's something similar, because on seminar, right? In case you're not aware of this, on seminar, sometimes what Sifu Inasano shows on seminar is what he happens to be working on at that time. You see, when I joined him, right? When I went out to see him in '83, it did not faze me at all that he was listed as teaching Filipino Kali and not teaching Jeet Kune Do. I didn't understand the inner workings or the inside baseball behind all of that, but it didn't really bother me. He was Dan Inasano, he was Bruce Lee's Los Angeles guy, and I wanted to spend some time with him. So whatever it is that he was teaching, I was down for it, right? As a matter of fact, I went to train with him, and I went to train with Francis Fong also, because somehow instinctively I had the idea that I should do a little bit similar to what Bruce Lee had done, and that I should get an experience of Wing Chun and then see what sense I could make out of it. And the rest, as they say, is history, right? So somebody who experienced Dan Inasano in 1983 could end up having totally different experiences from somebody who's experiencing Dan Inasano in 1993, in 2003, in 2013. You know, that's right. Like we were talking about the people that come on the dialogues with me. So there's a kid from I call them kids because some of them weren't even born when I started training with Dan Inasano, right? So there's a kid, Anthony Fontana from Unlimited Martial Arts in Brooklyn. He's been on, right? Interesting kid. I like him a lot. There's another guy. I'm kind of biased towards him because he's a Trinidadian, like I am. Up in Canada, a guy named Marvin Ishmael. I haven't had him on the show yet, but he's another young, intelligent guy in the Inasano lineage that's doing a great job. And so, of course, I'd love to have him on the show, because these guys are the younger generation. They're like the newer generation. So I want to see what it is that they're getting, and kind of compare and contrast my 36 years with Inasano with their 10, 15, 20 years or what have you. All right. So Sifu Randy asked if I have favorite drills or area of focus from Wing Chun that I like to teach. Favorite drills. I kind of stay away from the idea of favorite, because as much as you might try to avoid it, you're going to end up working on the stuff that you enjoy, right, with your students. So having favorite drills or a favorite area of focus, and then that's the one that I like to teach. I wouldn't say that I have a favorite drill or a favorite area of focus. I did see you, Sifu Randy, on the Mukjang. I saw your video on the Mukjang. That was pretty sweet, right? No, there are things, like, I'll tell you one thing about me and the Wing Chun and what have you. So the trap in hands, right, which I like to say were made famous. The idea of trap in hands, I think, was made famous by Paul Vunak in the JKD world. All right. My experience was, we did in the Kali, we did coordination drills, right? So I learned like the figure 8 family as a coordination drill, and then you learn combat drills. But in the trapping, there were no coordination drills. There were energy drills, but they're not coordination drills. So you went straight to combat technique when it came to like the Wing Chun trapping, or the Jun Fan trapping, or the JKD trapping, or however you want to refer to the trapping. You went straight to the combat. And that was fine with me, because I'm a Jeet Kune Do nut, but I realized that I couldn't teach it that way to my students. So I developed a number of coordination drills for trapping. A lot of it, a lot of the inspiration for it comes from Francis Fong, right? I don't do exactly what he does, but the idea behind it was sparked by something that I got from him. So I developed a bunch of coordination drills for the trap in hands, that then the movement, just like we do in stick fighting, you convert the coordination drill into a combat drill. So we do something similar. We have coordination drills for the trap in hands, and then just by changing the distance and by changing the timing and the area of application, then it becomes a combat drill, right? But I wouldn't say that I have a favorite area as such. I try to stay away from influencing my students in that way. All right. Yeah, so Bo Jackson, that's exactly it, right? Bo Jackson saying that that Sifu Dan will compartmentalize and teach different arts, right, as individual systems. If you go to JKD class, you get JKD. If you go to Kali class, you get Kali, Silat class, and what have you. Yeah, I think because what Inasano is doing, he's trying to assist in people's going through the process for themselves, and not trying to give people the end result or the product, which is very, very important in your JKD education and your JKD development. You definitely don't want, you know what this reminds me of? Because this was another thing that came up on Facebook. I can't believe I made a joke about this recently, that back in the old days when I had my what I call the big school, right? When I had the big school, I used to spend about 3 minutes 3 times a week on Facebook. Now I'm on Facebook every day almost, right? Even on Sundays, right? But that's what happens when life changes. Okay, so why was I telling you this? Oh shoot. If Glenn was, is Glenn still here? If Glenn was here, Glenn could keep me on track, right? So this is what happens to me when I have a thought, and then if there's nobody there to keep me on track, then I will forget what the heck it is I was going to talk about. All right, so compartmentalizing, that was what Bo Jackson said. Oh, now I remember. Okay, so this is another thing that came up on Facebook. My Jeet Kune Do senior, Chris Kent, he wrote a blog article about why he calls his thing Chris Kent Jeet Kune Do. And I think, I don't know if he made the point, but it registered with me. He doesn't say Chris Kent's, as in possessive apostrophe S, right? Chris Kent's Jeet Kune Do, as in this is his interpretation of Jeet Kune Do. He calls it Chris Kent Jeet Kune Do. To me, that identifies who the heck is the guy standing in front of you teaching, right, at the Kent Institute. Or if he's on seminar, it's this guy named Chris Kent. What is he teaching? He's teaching, this is how I look at it, he's teaching Bruce Lee's art and philosophy known as Jeet Kune Do. He's not trying to be Bruce Lee. He's not, you see, so when I say Bruce Lee's art, apostrophe S, I am merely indicating ownership, so to speak, right? So to me, there is no my interpretation of Jeet Kune Do, Cass Magda's interpretation. There's not all these different Jeet Kune Dos with all these different interpretations, so that, you know, one guy, his interpretation is that the spinning back fist should take priority over the lead straight punch because that's his interpretation. That's bogus crap, right? So there is not all this is just my Dwight Woods' opinion, all right? There's not all these different Jeet Kune Dos. There's Jeet Kune Do. There's a specific methodology behind the art and the science and the philosophy. And if you're not applying that, if you're not paying attention to the important factors of Jeet Kune Do, then I don't know what the heck it is that you're doing, right? So that was the thing I wanted to talk about, right? Right, exactly. See, so yeah, so nobody, I don't think anybody was ever trying to pass themselves off as now it's their version of Jeet Kune Do. And likewise, you know, there are some people on the internet that you know, if you say Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do, they're like, oh, well, you're trying to be Bruce Lee. No, man, the closest I get to being Bruce Lee is to wear these bloody shirts, right? But that's about it, okay? You know, I think I look really, really different, right, from how Bruce Lee looked, right? And I'm not as fast and I'm not as lean anymore, right? So anyhow, so yeah, right, Bo Jackson says that Sifu Inosano does not blend styles as some accuse him of doing. I've never heard, well, actually I shouldn't say I've never heard of the Inosano blend, because there is such a term. I'm going to tell you a story. I don't know, I remember he definitely said this, right? But, you know, somebody like Tim Bescherer would probably be able to comment on this more accurately, or even Joel Clark, right? But there was like a stick fighting tournament or something, and there were people whose like their system or something was the ILS, right? And he was like, what the heck is the ILS? And somebody told him, oh, it's the Inosano Lacoste system. And he was like, oh, okay. So apparently, right? Apparently Dan Inosano was not aware that there was a thing called the Inosano Lacoste system, right? I don't know, right? I just think that's funny. But yeah, but this thing about the blend, I think that out there in the martial art world, that so yes, so Mafalindo Silat is something different, Bob Landers, right? Mafalindo Silat is a blend, to the best of my understanding, of Malaysian Bersilat, Filipino Kuntao Silat, and Indonesian Penjak Silat, but it was so that Sifu Inosano could teach it the way he wanted to teach it, right? And not have to be in this camp or that camp or the other camp. He can just go, oh, look, this thing works really well with this thing and what have you, right? I think that sometimes, yeah, right. So, okay, so Bo Jackson and Bob Landers are talking about the blending of other styles with Jeet Kune Do. That ain't so. That right. Bo is right on the money. Dan Inosanto doesn't blend any style with Jeet Kune Do. I'll go back to what I said at the beginning, and then we'll wrap this up in a little bit. All right. Inosanto tries to show people how aspects of Jeet Kune Do, certain Jeet Kune Do principles or what have you, can be applied in other arts. Or how they exist in other arts. Look, on Wednesday, if you guys didn't watch the broadcast, I'm not being self-serving, but if you didn't watch the broadcast on Wednesday, I suggest that I'll actually, when I finish here, I have to do the final edit and I'll put it up on the YouTube, right? But you should take a look at it, because I discovered that Shotokan, that thing that I like to make fun of, so to speak, right? I have deep respect for them, but whenever I want to make a comparison or a reference to the classical mess, like I always point to Shotokan, and I find out I have to stop doing that because there's different versions of Shotokan. There are people in Shotokan in the 1920s in Japan, they were sparring with full contact protective gear. So I say this because what did Bruce Lee say about his rejection, that might be too strong a word, right, of the Wing Chun? Here's what he said, that he had lost faith in the classical styles, even the Wing Chun style, because all styles are a product of dry land swimming, right? And so he said, so since like 1966, my method has been sparring full contact with protective equipment and what have you. Well, that's 46 years after people in Japan were doing that in the so-called classical system of Shotokan, right? So apparently, not everything. Gosh. Anyhow, okay. Bob Landers, what did you say? Dan Inosanto created what was later referred to as the Jun Fan and JKD dummy sets. This would be a blend. I don't know. I don't think I agree with you on that, but a blend of what? The Jun Fan sets, as far as I understand, it was take these specific techniques that are trained and put them in a specific order and put them on the dummy, right? So, Pak Sao and Jun Choi on the right side, do it on the left side, right? Bong Sao Lap Sao Gua Choi, Bong Sao Lap Sao Gua Choi, left and right, something like that. I don't think that that's a blend of anything. That's a breakdown of specific techniques just applied on the dummy. So I'm not sure what you mean, but Bob Landers, in August next month, when you come on the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues, we will discuss this stuff at length, okay? Right? So okay, so all right, so we've been on here for 45 minutes. I think that that's a good enough time. Let's see. Right, okay. Okay, but I've seen stuff under the Jun Fan system that is non-JKD Wing Chun. All right, well, we'll get into that. We'll get into that, Bob Landers, right? Because I think that I will definitely enjoy talking with you, because you've got a perspective that yeah. Okay. All right. So I'll tell you. What class was that, Mr. Burgess? The class where he did blend. Can you remember? what that was called and what time period that was? Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'll tell you something about the dummy sets and what have you, right? And you can verify this with Chris Kent, right? Because he did post and what have you. Oh, okay. Yeah. See, Bob Landers, this is why you got to come on the program with me, man. We got so much to talk about, right? Okay. So as far as the dummy sets and what have you, my belief is that Dan Inosanto created that stuff because he thought it was good stuff, and he thought that it was good enough stuff that people should be training in it. Bruce Lee might not have had an identical opinion on it because, as we've heard from Ted Wong, that during his time with Bruce Lee, I think this is what some people refer to as latter stage JKD, there was not that much Wing Chun in Bruce Lee's application or what have you. It was boxing and fencing, right? I think of it this way. I think at that time period that they're referring to, I think Bruce Lee had evolved to a point where nobody could touch him, right? And he could just hit you at will. So, you know, he didn't need to trap anybody because there's nobody whose hand could come up in time that he had to immobilize it or what have you. I don't know. I wasn't there, right? But yeah, one of my understandings is that Sifu Dan it loves all that hand trapping stuff and what have you, and he thought that it was good stuff that people should be aware of, that people, and again, like I said at the beginning, right, Dan Inosanto is very concerned about people going through the process, not people trying to go to the end result without doing the work. You see, right? And so that's a very very important what should I say? A very very important concept. Not forget Jeet Kune Do and martial art. Just for life, man. You got to be willing to do the work that it takes to get where it is that you want to get to, right? As opposed to, you know, depending on government handouts or something. That's a different topic, right? All right. So. I think we'll wrap this up here. Okay, Mr. Burgess, I'm going to go take a look at the Rick Tucci interview and see what you're talking about. I did see a snippet of that. That interview is what, 20 something years old, maybe even more than that, right? And yeah, that was probably, you know, that was in an era of grave politicalness, right? So there was a lot of politics stuff going on, and you know, things being said and what have you. It's all nonsense. It really is, right? Most important thing is what are we doing as individuals to develop ourselves, because that's all Bruce Lee really is. Bruce Lee is just a great example of what individual responsibility, what individual hard work can achieve. So he should be inspiring us to do likewise, and then we in turn, those of us who teach and pass the art on, we should be doing the same thing with our people. So then ultimately, this is what Jeet Kune Do becomes. Jeet Kune Do becomes a vehicle, right, for self-development and self-perfection, right? So I'll give you another one. This one is trademarked also, so none of you guys can use it without permission. So my school is called Unified Martial Art Academy, UMAA. One Saturday evening, many years ago, I realized that the one of the captions that I had, which was using martial art as a vehicle for, I realized that the first four letters of the first four words was also UMAA. So that's become something. So that's what Jeet Kune Do is. It is a vehicle for self-perfection, right? I'll talk about that on the broadcast next week, because Mark Stewart said something to me, and I think that he has a very, very valid point. So I'll make that a topic. The whole self-perfection thing, I'll make that a topic for next week's broadcast, right? Okay, so we gotta pull the plug on this one. Bob Landers, we will talk, right? You have to promise me that you'll come on the program. You and Richard Burgess, not together. Yet on Wednesday, it seemed as if what I typed implied that I wanted the two of you to come on together. No, I don't. I want each of you to have your own show, right? So let me tell you about next Friday, episode number 76, right? With Dave Kovar of Satori Academy. Now, if you might not be familiar with the name Dave Kovar if you are not in the martial art business world, which unfortunately a lot of JKD people are not, right? So you might not be familiar with the name Dave Kovar, but if you are in the Jeet Kune Do business, if you are in the martial art business, then you definitely know who he is. I've been aware of him from Bob Landers, you're too much, right? I've been aware of Dave Kovar for many years. As a matter of fact, he and I will talk about the single greatest contribution that he provided to my development as a professional martial artist. So he'll be on with me next Friday. I'm pretty sure it's at 6 p.m. Miami time, right? And that's about it, right? Okay, guys, I thank you so much for showing up, knowing that it would be just me talking to the camera, right? I really appreciate the fact that some of you were willing to spend some time with me. I hope I got to everybody's question. It's kind of difficult to read the comments at the same time that I'm trying to keep my thoughts together, right? Yeah, let's wrap that up, okay? All right, so this was episode number 75 of the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, signing off. Enjoy the rest of the Independence Day weekend here in the U.S. Have a good weekend wherever else you are. You guys take care. See you soon.